season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for OutDrank The Coverage in 2023.
Hey, I mean, that was a good point.
I think we might start seeing some go back. It's the last week of the NFL season, and college football has their title game, and intern Noe and I are here to get a little drunk and talk a little football, as we always do, here on L4 Media. Intern Noe joins me now. Grandeur Pest Solutions, OutDrank The Coverage, Week 17 of the NFL. How are you doing, Mr. Intern Noe?
I'm doing well, sir. I had a good New Year. I had a good Christmas. Hope you had a good Christmas and New Year, too.
Did you get everything you wanted from Santy?
All that and more.
All that in a bag of chips is what you're supposed to. I had a good one. I have a back injury. I'm kind of painful. I'm not going to even pretend. This is like the second time we were having to record this because we had a technical issue. So let's just get right to it. Intern Noe, how are you doing? What are you drinking?
Doing well. Drinking Knob Creek 18. It's one of the tougher whiskeys to find in Texas. So glad I have a bottle. And kind of smells like apricot. Has a little caramel notes to it. I like it. How about you, buddy? What are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking Larceny, the stuff you brought over, 92 proof. Perfect for this type of night. It's like 6 o'clock. Well, it's 5 o'clock. But by the time we get through, it'll be 6:30. It's cold outside, and this is one of those liquors that you actually kind of feel like you do warm up, even though we all know that in the first drink you warm up and then you actually cool down. But you know the point. It's a perfect to sip on a cup from about 5 to 6 and then chill the rest of the night, not have to drink anymore. Have that. It's 92 proof, so it has a nice little kick to it.
No.
But apricot, I've never. Oh, cheers! I have never knowingly tasted apricot.
It's really good. Now, some places in like the smaller towns in Texas, especially North Texas, they grow really well.
Yeah, they grow really well in these. And my parents have an apricot tree. I've just never had an apricot.
Oh, I like them. I mean, they're one of my favorites. I just don't get a chance to have fresh apricots. So,
you know what else I've never had? Texas in the championship game.
Oh God!
We're gonna start off with college football here, and then we'll get to OutDrank The Coverage, the NFL part in the second segment of the show. I will go ahead and say I feel like this was easily the best semifinal weekend since the playoffs have started. Again, it's kind of fitting that the last four-way playoff ends with what to me shows that the committee got it right. And we can talk the Florida State thing all we want about undefeated, all that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, Florida State, and I'm not even talking about what happened in the bowl game against Georgia. I don't count that. But Florida State would not have stayed with any of these teams within 2 touchdowns because of the quarterback issue.
Yeah, unfortunately, with Jordan Travis being injured, they just were not the same team. They were able to still stay undefeated and win their conference championship, but I felt they were most deserving to be in there, but I
I
knew
don't
they were
disagree.
not a top 4 team without Jordan Travis.
Well, and then also when you start peeling back what their resume was, yeah, they were unbeaten. But they were again in the same conference that Clemson was somehow able to rise above that perception. But it took a couple years. People discredited Clemson for the first couple times when they first got good in the Sweeney era. But yeah, I mean, when you actually pull back Florida State's thing, it wasn't the greatest resume. They didn't have a resume that could endure losing your star quarterback. And they didn't have time to show that they could respond well with a backup quarterback because that I contend that I almost feel like that championship game was rigged to make sure Florida State goes unbeaten. That's how ugly that game was.
Yeah, it was a pretty ugly game. But this also brings up another issue with college football right now. Uh, with the playoffs in, all these other bowl games, they're good money for the universities, but they're kind of meaningless to these players. And you're seeing a lot of play like Marvin Harrison. He just didn't even play in his bowl game for Ohio State. There's players transferring like Malik Murphy for Texas.
All right, let's talk about that because I even told you like right in the middle of about 2 weeks ago, like I'm watching more bowl games this year than I have in a while, purposely because I kind of wanted to talk about it. First off, the bowls outside of if you thought you were in a championship game back in the day, the bowls have never meant as much for the seniors. I mean, yeah, they want to go out and play well and all, but the guys that are trying to go pro, they were worried about injury. They've always been worried about injury. I mean, because you don't want to blow your knee out. I mean, Jalen Smith, Notre Dame. I mean, that's a guy that I think is easily a a top 10 pick, and B, his career path completely goes different. If you saw the 1 year that he had a decent knee, or you saw the 1 year that he could play, but then he started losing strength in that leg again, and it was all because he tore his knee up in a bowl game. So I have no problem with the whole kids not wanting to play. The portal thing, I'm all for transfers. They do need to move it to the off season.
Yes.
Or maybe make it like literally like free agency in the NFL. The midnight that the championship game is played next Monday. So midnight of that night, as soon as midnight strikes and we roll into Tuesday, whatever, the 9th, the portal's open and then players, because also you allow young players to figure out if they're going to fit at their school as the starters might not be playing.
Yeah, I just, man, for me, it's hard for me to watch these bowl games now. I used to love watching them as a kid.
Yeah.
But then, now we have a record number of players transferring, and these are like, I don't know how you would quantify this, but the amount of talent that's in this portal right now, I think this has to be an all-time high. And they're already announcing where they're going, like Riley Leonard, who I think he's going to Notre Dame. The Oregon State quarterback, they played in the bowl game, but DJ Uiagalelei is transferring to Florida State, so they're going to be empowered. Huh?
Good get for Florida State right there.
Oh, fantastic.
That puts them as a top 5 team, in my opinion, next year.
Yeah, they're building a really good program there. They this particular season, they were more quarterback dependent, but I think in the future, they'll be a more well-rounded team.
All right, so real quick, you just said something, building the team. When do we see it? When do we see the first group of guys who are all, because me working in high school, I know this. All these top recruits are all Twitter friends. All these top recruits are friends. When do we see the first super team? When do we see a team like a Texas or a Michigan or an OU that's that by graduation is going to be really, really depleted, like 3 starters on offense, 3 starters on defense, and then the transfer, they hit it hard and the players are all friends, and we end up having 12 transfers to one school? Or when does the small school sell out for 1 year for that? Bring up a Liberty University, pull up a $500 million deal and just start, I want to see it. Like, I'm excited about all this. None of this to me is bad. Move the portal, because that's not fair. Like, Malik Murphy really wanted to be there for Texas. He couldn't, because if he wanted to commit. But now the bowl things, do you enjoy them less simply because we've grown up now and it's just, It's not like back then. Part of the allure of the bowl was you were seeing teams you didn't get to see all year, and you're getting to see matchups that were cool, like in the Sun Bowl, OU versus Oregon State or something weird that you normally wouldn't see. But as we've gotten older, we see all that now.
That's a good question. I think for me, just right off the top of my head, I think it's two parts. I think one is the expanded number of bowls. Right now, we're at 41, I believe. And then two, it's the players that are not playing. I can't really tell. It's almost like you're just giving a team a win at this point with some of these teams like Ohio State.
But you're making your team better in the future, though, in the long run, because you're getting practices now. Like I said, these are guys that you can figure out, hey, we don't know if he's going to step in and be the next big thing. We can find out over the next 30 days of practices. Now, maybe that's the thing going forward. Maybe we stop marketing the bowls like they are now and push them as a look into the future. That's how you would tease it. Let's say, next year, Texas and USC don't make the playoff games. And so they're in the Cotton Bowl. That's a reasonable matchup in the Cotton Bowl. And instead of seeing, all the guys that are seniors next year for Texas and all the guys that are seniors next year for USC, you pitch it as this is the future of Texas versus the future of USC.
That would be fine. I'd be totally fine with it. But as of right now, I have no interest in watching bowl games because like you said, it's just not really the best representation of the team right then and there. It doesn't really represent their season for the most part. The team you see in these bowl games, they're not the same team that I saw for 12 weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I will say this, though. As of at least right now, that is only in the big schools. Mm-hmm. Now, there are certain individual players on the small school. And I'm not talking about the ones that are transferring. Again, the transfer portal needs to be fixed. Simply move it outside of bowl season. I'm not talking about anybody that transferred and didn't end up playing in their bowl game. I'm just talking about guys who are like, I don't want to play in the bowl. I don't want to hurt myself, blah, blah, blah. That's only in the big schools. At the small schools, you're still getting the SMU first time to a bowl, that type of thing. Boston College trying to win their first bowl in 9 years. Tulane still riding high year 2, and they're still at least in the bowl. You still saw those teams, all their guys playing. And I will say those games were still fun. I still enjoyed watching the random Poulan Weed Eater McDonald's Bowl at Wednesday at 1 p.m. while all y'all were working, and I'm taking the week off from after state, and I'm, little drunk, little stoned, watching football in my underwear, eating pizza. We'll put a picture of that up later. But yeah, I agree with you on you expect to see Florida State and Georgia, and you got Georgia versus Florida State's JV.
Yeah, it takes the enjoyment out of it. On paper, I would have loved to have seen Georgia and Florida State at full strength play. I think that would have been a very entertaining game, a different mix of schemes and talent. And I thought it would have been interesting, but alas, that didn't happen. It was a blowout.
You know what the mistake? I just realized this, dude. You know what the mistake was?
What?
All right. So what they should have been doing during the four, again, this all changes next year, and you can't do it with a 13th and 14th team. It would make no sense. But right. if you'd have said, okay, the playoffs are first and second, third and four, winner goes to the championship, 5 and 6. Winner of that gets $2 million to the school, $2 million. Of course, now with Neil, $2 million to the players, and if you beat that team well enough, you could actually jump all the way to number 2. You can't get to the championship, but you could at least jump all the way to number 2. I think that would have added even if your big stars aren't playing, because honestly, Florida State gave up. They didn't want to be there, no matter what. Even if their guys would have, if this was the 80s and their guys were all playing, they'd have all played half-ass because they had nothing to play for. Give that 5th and 6th place game at least a little. Of course, it doesn't matter now because we're going to 12. But anyway. Michigan, Alabama, what were your thoughts?
Great battle between two heavyweights. I enjoyed the back and forth. I even enjoyed the mistakes, but which is bound to happen with two really good teams. One team's going to force the other to make a mistake. It just happens. Yeah. It's not going to be Texas USC circa 2005 championship game where there was very few mistakes in that game. It was just two good teams just beating up each other.
Yeah.
In this case, yeah, Michigan, their special teams it's borderline trash at this point. They're not. They had a bad special teams night. They'll need to correct that next week if they have any shot at beating Washington.
Now, I do think and I can't say that I've watched every Michigan game, but I do think that was more of a mirage than the normal for them this year. I don't think, and Jim Harbaugh's teams are usually not bad on special teams. So I think that was more of just one of those weird bad game type things.
Yeah, I mean, like Jake Moody, he was a third-round pick for the 49ers this season, kicking and doing a solid job. He had ups and downs, but overall, he's having a really good rookie year. So, yeah, they have good special teams. I haven't said that. They have – this is probably the most talented Michigan team I've seen since I've been watching football.
I agree.
I think they're better than that 97 team. That was more of a 2 or 3 man show. It was Woodson, Brian Greasy, and I don't remember who else. But
it was a lot. Was that Tyrone Wheatley?
That was before. That was
before
Todd Collin era.
Yeah, that's right. I think Michigan 97 was one of those. It was those two guys, and then each week somebody else would step up, that you'd never hear from again, that type of thing. Speaking of, we're going to be doing something this offseason on that 97 college football season simply because 30 for 30 came out with about the Heisman race. And so in turn, Noe and I do things bigger. Y'all talk the Heisman race. We're going to talk that whole 97 season. That's going to be one of our look back at first college edition. So we stay tuned for that. But I was impressed with how they held Jalen Milroy. I kind of, I think we all felt that, Alabama's in, and we all kind of like, here it comes. And then honestly, it kind of felt like we were going to, it's kind of funny that it is Michigan, Washington, because I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Bama, Texas too.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the rematch. Well, I actually thought it was going to be UT, Michigan, but yeah, UT, Alabama. Alabama was on a roll. They beat a great Georgia team, stopped their 29-game winning streak. So they had the momentum. Michigan plays the way Michigan plays. Harbaugh just got back from his second 3-game suspension. So, I mean, there could have been some coaching rust there. The way Michigan plays is kind of SEC-ish. They're very strong defensively. They run heavy. It's kind of what you saw with Harbaugh with the 49ers, to a lesser extent with the Stanford Cardinals. I really like the way they play. And I think now Harbaugh has the actual talent to really reinforce his philosophy on both sides of the ball.
It's a shame he won't be there after this year.
Why you say that?
Oh, I think he's going NFL.
Which team?
That's a good one. I think Chargers would probably be one that I don't know if they're constructed with what he's going to want to do. Because he does play. Honestly, the team that's best constructed for him, they're going to keep their coach, and that's the Bears. Because what
Harbaugh would do was address the offensive and defensive lines of the Bears. That's their one weakness. They've already kind of done it in the draft and then during the Montez Sweat trade. So they kind of
great trade deal
there. Yeah. And so I think the Bears will just add to that, and then it'll be a perfect Harbaugh team. Yeah, and he was a former quarterback for them.
And he loves a scrambling quarterback. And he loves a quarterback that you can design runs. But anyway, back to this game. Let's go to that last play. I know there was a bad snap, and some have said and shown that it looked like that might have been a run-pass option where Milroy was supposed to turn and throw it to McClellan, who was kind of running out of the back for a little wheel route, mini wheel route, had 2 blockers. And if that's true, it looked like it was open. But it doesn't matter. Bad snap. And if you're a quarterback of a Division I team that's a top 5 team, you've got to understand where you're at in the moment. You cannot just go up the middle. I mean, I'd understand if in the replays we'd have seen like a opening and he thinks there was no opening. Like he picks the ball up and literally he almost just kind of falls forward it's almost like he thought he was closer to the goal line maybe.
Yeah, it looked like it's exactly what you just said. It looked like he was running like he was at the 2-yard line, not the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
So, it just looked bad. It might be what you're saying. It might have been an option play, but yeah, I really feel I can't say I feel bad for Alabama because they've been here before, but
it's weird, isn't it?
I hate to see a game end like this. It almost reminds me of another game where Michigan and Alabama played a major bowl game. I want to say late 90s, early 2000s. I remember Sean Alexander was the star running back for Alabama. And it ended up being like 35-34, but the game ended on a missed extra point.
Oh, okay, one of those.
Yeah. So it kind of that's kind of how this ending to this game felt to me. You know, it was a great game between giants, and then it ends that way.
You know what? It felt like the Dak San Francisco game 2 years ago. Like you feel like we're building up to this one final great play. You know, whether they win or not, you're going to throw it into the end zone. Greatness will happen, or it won't. And then, oh no, wait, the official again. Everybody wants to talk about the Cowboys get help from the officials. We'll talk about that in a minute. Though. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, but anyway, Michigan moves on. They move on to take on Washington, who outlast Texas 37-31. This is the one, you know, everybody was really big on like Texas is going to roll and they might win by 14 points. And I kept going, nah, this pass defense is terrible. And that's it was a bad matchup. I think if Texas plays Michigan, they beat Michigan because Michigan is run heavy. They throw the ball, but they're run heavy. And that's Texas's strength on defense. This was a bad matchup. And I knew that the offense would have to keep up. And they did, but they didn't. A couple turnovers. All that being said, Washington's head coach almost basically got fired on the spot because he about gave Texas a chance to. In fact, Texas had 3 good chances to win the game. But either way, great game for Washington, man. Michael Penix Jr. just absolutely shredded this Texas defense. And it wasn't that Texas was playing terrible coverage. I mean, they were just the guys were making he was making throws and his guys were catching the ball.
It's what we always talk about on the show, man. A good team is like a house, and you have to have a solid base. And the base for a good football team is the offensive line and defensive line. Washington's offensive line has been rated as the best in the country this season.
Yep.
And they just outplayed Texas. They made sure Penix had all the time in the world to make his throws. And you give someone like Penix, who's very accurate all the time in the world, he's just going to pick apart anyone in the country.
And Texas, I was going to say, Texas' secondary and a lot of those were playing well because Penix had time, but still it took time. Texas was actually getting to him. It was just 2 steps too late because the secondary was holding as long as they could. And finally, somebody's just going to miss a step. It's just going to happen. But yeah, that Washington offensive line was absolutely impressive. You know, they basically –
Dude, with an elite team like Washington, if you give them 2 extra seconds, 2 seconds more, yeah, it's just that's all she wrote, man. You can't really. I mean, he has Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, and you get 2 really good receivers. You got a really good running back in Dylan Johnson. You got one of the best line in the country. You got to get pressure, or you're not going to win, and that's really what happened.
There was no blitzes. Did you notice that? And I know Texas isn't in a blitz heavy team, but that's and I've been I don't even know the guy's name. That tells you where I'm at as far as coach. I used to know every coach, but the defense coordinator for Texas has frustrated me all year. That is the kind of change that you have a month to do that can be the difference in, you know, that's what great coaches do. You know, I was thinking about this at the first half. Now, he ended up riding the ship, but Ewers struggled early. And I kind of wondered, would Sark ever do the Nick Saban and be like, you know, Jalen, you're not playing terrible, but you're not playing good enough. We're going to try something new. And for the defense, it's like, guy, you know you're going up against a guy that Penix cannot move well. I mean, he's not going to scramble. He's more like
He's had 2 knee surgeries and he had shoulder surgery. That's why he's a 6-year quarterback.
That's why you don't play at Indiana. All those injuries happen. Yeah. But he's like, what's his name? Big dude, Jacksonville.
Byron Leftwich.
Yeah, he's like Leftwich. Like he'll run straight pretty fast, but he's not going to dodge you. If you get pressure in his face, he's going to start having problems. That's why he struggled for the second half of the season. Oregon did a great job in both of their games of getting in his face at times, but Texas didn't. And there was no blitz, and there was no. That's that adjustment you make. You have 30 days. That just frustrated me. Offensively, I thought Texas played well. You know, this is the problem when you run the ball well. Even if you run the ball great, if your defense isn't making stops, eventually you've got to start throwing the ball more. because one bad run completely can change a drive, and you're punting, and you're not matching a score. I did think in the second half the defense for Texas played a lot better. They started holding them to field goals. But all in all, Noe, as a Texas fan, great game. You just tip your hat to Washington. I am extremely excited where Texas finished this year. There was no sadness in this one. There was oh shit, we're going to get back in it. We're going to win it. Oh no. That part sucked because it did. I kind of built myself on, hey, they're going to lose. And then, oh my God, we might win. And then they're not. But other than that, I'm perfectly happy with how this game went.
Yeah, I mean, considering one of your best offensive weapons couldn't even make it for this game.
And with how everybody else ran, Jonathan Brooks running on, and this is nothing at CJ Baxter. He's a freshman. He's going to be great, but he doesn't finish the end of runs like Brooks. There was a couple of those runs, and I even thought it in the moment that if Brooks would have been on it, that might have been a 65-yarder and a score.
Which would change how Washington would be, they would make them change their defensive philosophy.
Exactly.
And overall, Texas got 180 yards in total rushing.
Yeah,
so it's not like they were bad, but like you said, they couldn't just have. There were some opportunities for a home run play, and it just didn't happen. They were getting yards,
and there was some in the passing game too. One of them, good pass rush by Washington, but also Xavier Worthy got kind of turned around. And the ball ends up landing like 2 yards to the side of him. That if he'd have just known where the ball was, that's a big play. You have on the run sheet who's the starting quarterback in 2024 for Texas. I mean, unless Ewers decides to go draft or maybe take a transfer, I think he is. I don't think there's any question. I don't think people understand that the Mannings truly are, as long as they feel he's on the right path, they're perfectly happy for him sitting 2 years behind somebody. That's why they made the move.
My only thing with that is I'm not sure Ewers is going to come back. I know he said he was, but
do you think he'll go pro?
I think there's an opportunity there for him. Like as far as prospect goes, as much as I like Penix, I really like his game. The problem with him, it's the same problem as Jason White for Oklahoma about 20 years ago. His mobility is not the best right now just because of the surgeries, and he's older. Now, I know some NFL scouts are okay with it, but I really think that's going to be an issue at the next level.
Well, and he's got a good arm. He's got a good arm, but he's not a cannon of an arm.
He's finesse. He's really he's really accurate. He's good in the pocket, but I'm having a hard time. Beginning of the season, I had a different opinion. Now I'm like, I don't know. Things have to roll right for Penix to be able to be a consistent starter in the NFL. Whereas I think Ewers could actually do very well in the next level. And I think he's already proven himself in college. I think he should just go. But,
Yeah, I actually agree with that. He's very up and down. But, man, in big games, he played big for Texas. I think his attitude, fairly or unfairly, is going to hurt him because he's very laissez-faire. He just never looks bothered. And he even admitted going into this season he needed to step that up. But I still think he comes back. I think he's having fun. I think he's getting paid well as the Neil. He's not from a poor family. So it's, and that's the other thing with Manning. I was like, well, he's got to move. Money is not an issue for the Mannings. They're not moving him around for more money in a Neil. They don't need that. So I think Ewers runs it back next year. I think Texas immediately is a top 3 team. They need to replace. I would not hate it if they replace their defensive coordinator, or at least
they got their run defense down. They're solid there, but their pass defense needs some help.
Yeah, and whether it be adding more pressure, they were very much what I always talk about. One of the knocks on the 09 Cowboys, they were very much feast or famine on the sacks. They either got sacks or they didn't. There was no, like Dallas this year. Dallas has 42 sacks. That's almost 13 less than what they ended up with last year. They're actually going to finish in the middle of the pack in sacks, but their pressure rate is top 4. They're getting to the quarterback. They're affecting the quarterback. Heck, go back to Seattle, 4th down or 3rd down and 4th down, back-to-back plays. They get in the face of the quarterback. He can't make the play. Even the Lions, even on and I know it turned out to be offsides, but the back-to-back 2-point conversion plays, they got pressure on Goff and made him make throws he didn't want to make at the time. But Texas is not.
Yeah, all I was saying, this year compared to other years, the Cowboys are getting more timely pressure.
Yes, more timely. Good point. Well, except for the last two games and the last two drives. But anyway, back to this game, back to Texas. So I think Texas, gets some more. The 91. I can't think of his name right now. The former lacrosse player. He had a really good year. He was from Austin Westlake. He had a really good first year at the end. With like 11 sacks. So there's stuff to build on. I am extremely happy where Texas is. All right, so now let's finish out this college segment real quick. Couple minutes. Who wins and why?
I think I'm going to go ahead and go with Michigan. I think their defensive line is superior. Even though Washington has a great offensive line, I think Michigan's overall defense and how aggressive they are is going to give Penix and company some issues. And I just like their overall team. They're going to grind out the clock. McCarthy has been getting first round love in the upcoming NFL draft. You don't really see him show off because he doesn't really have to, but a lot of scouts say he has the real stuff to play at the next level. So I really like Michigan's overall game. I think they win.
Yeah, I think that they're able to run the ball. I think it's Giants versus Bills Super Bowl. Michigan will play keep away. I think Washington will be able to score, though, the few times they have the ball. They just won't have the ball enough. All right, let's flip it over to now the last week of the NFL season. But first, of course, we're going to talk about last week, and let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about the controversy. What were your thoughts on the is he eligible, is he not, all that brouhaha?
It's a he said scenario because referee said Taylor Decker told him that number 70 was eligible, but Taylor Decker said, no, I said I was eligible. So we'll never know the truth. There's no audio of it, so we just won't know.
But there is audio of the official saying number 70 has reported as eligible. Number 70 is eligible.
Correct.
So if you're Detroit and you're having all this going on, and you've decided that this is your line in the sand. You're winning or losing with this play. How do you not hear that and go, wait? No. That's not what he's, even if you have to take 5 yards, a delay a game. I mean, just that I don't know what was said. I don't look, this official, apparently this crew has struggled this year. And by the way, they missed I don't know if they missed, or I'm almost wondering, Noe, if the official told the ref, hey, it's tripping on the Lions, and he for some reason went tripping, because that was very obvious that Hutchinson tried to trip, but yet they called it on Dallas. And I'm talking about the drive before. If that play's not called, Dallas runs the clock out. We don't ever even get Detroit with the ball again.
But all people are going to focus on is what Dallas did. Instead of running out the clock, they just kept throwing the ball. And they gave Detroit time to tie the game up, or potentially tie the game up.
Yeah. Either way, I still think that I get it. You want to go for it. That's fine. This game didn't really mean anything for the Lions. It did, but it didn't. Again, we talked about it before. They had a shot at the number 1 seed, kind of like how Dallas had a shot at the division title last year. It would have taken the Eagles losing to the Giants, and you don't plan for that. And I know they lost to Arizona this week, but I contend Arizona this year is better than even the playoff Giants last year. But the point is, nobody thought that they would actually lose to the Giants. That was kind of the Lions. Yeah, they could technically make a run for the 1 seed, but everything has to happen perfect. And so I get him just wanting to go for it, but I think they got too cute. I think they tried to confuse Dallas, and it ended up just being a confusing situation all the way around, and they didn't stop it and go, okay, no, that's not what we meant.
Yeah, they really should have been listening because the referee did, verbalize who was eligible. Yeah. So going back, Detroit, in order assume they had won, they would have had a chance at number 1 seed if the 49ers lost to the Rams, who have won 6 of 7. So it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. And Christian McCaffrey probably still would not have played because he's having calf issues right now. So it's still possible that the Lions could have gotten the number 1 seed. It's possible they get the number 2 seed still. They need Dallas and Philadelphia to lose, but it's still possible.
Yeah.
Not going to happen, but it's still possible.
All right, so let's go into the game itself. What were your thoughts on the game itself?
I thought Dallas kept the team that wasn't as good as them close. Like it was almost as if Dallas just didn't want to pull away from this game. They wanted to keep it close for some reason. I know they couldn't really run well, but CeeDee had a career day. I was happy with that. I was happy with some of the pressure we were getting. I was happy that we actually got turnovers, but the game was a lot closer than it should have been. Goff is terrible if he's getting pressured, and he only had 1 sack in this game. He had a fairly decent game inside of the 2 interceptions.
But there was a lot of key moments where the pressure forced things that he didn't want.
Yeah, the 2 interceptions, namely. So it was there, but for the most game, it kind of wasn't. And I just think that Dallas needs to really address their issues there because they're not getting the consistent pressure they were getting earlier in the year.
Well, again, but their pressure rates, I get this every week from PPF. Their pressure rate was top 5. I mean, this week, they do it individually. It was top 5.
I'm just thinking how they calculate that, though, because it's almost like the decision's already been made by the quarterback to where he's going to throw it to right when the Cowboys are finally getting some pressure.
Yeah.
I know it's like a second or 2 difference. I know it's
well, it's not. It is about decision making. You're right, but it's also simple physics of follow through. You know, you hit a quarterback as he's throwing the ball, there's a good chance the ball's not going to go where he wants. But no, I agree though. I do think we need to see more getting home. Dorrance Armstrong has not been as consistent as he was, and that's also the problem. You know, it's kind of like a bullpen. When you have a pass rush by committee, it literally is like having a baseball bullpen. From year to year, you're going to get different results. That's just how it works. But this year, it has felt more and more that it's Micah Parsons or maybe Sam Williams and nobody else. But I will say this. DeMarcus Lawrence, once again, back-to-back weeks proves why DeMarcus Lawrence is still maybe the best, just pure overall defensive end. 3 tackle for losses, 3 plays that ended up being really big in the drives, and he just dominated that backside all game long. Unfortunately,
he's not talked about around the league as much as he used to be, but I think his game is better than it's ever been. I think, he was always good on both sides, but it's almost like he's took it up another level as soon as he turned 30, and he's playing some of the best ball on that side of the ball I've seen in a while. Honestly, I'm glad we're getting some pressure. I'm glad we got some turnovers, but this game was a lot closer than it should have been. Detroit, division winner, so it's a quality team, another team with a winning record that Dallas beat. But yeah, I would like to see more improvement going into the playoffs.
Well, and we still have the issue with the last drive defense. I've talked about this even before this year, and you know that this defense at times, you know, when you really, really need it, that's when they pick to disappear, and it's back-to-back weeks again against solid offenses, but still back-to-back weeks. But I agree with you. Let's, 2 of the things that cost Dallas at least, we'll say minimum least 6 points, but really at least 14 points was Dak's interception. And that was a very old Dak throw. You know, you're going to get that. Your quarterback's getting cocky. He's playing the best he's ever played. He tried to make a cross body throw, short side of the field. And then the Lamb fumble, that's rare. So that's 14 points right there. And I think the game's over. It felt like they were on the cusp in the first half of doing one of those boat race where they get up 2 scores, get an interception, get up 3 scores. Next thing you know, it's 28-7 at half. But give the Lions credit. Hutchinson had a great game, 3 sacks. The offensive line is such an issue that today we'll go ahead and get this in. Dallas signs Lyle Collins as depth. It wouldn't shock me to see him start. I for whatever reason, Brandon Steele, he's taking a big step back, whether it just be the injury or whatever. I think some of it's loss of confidence because he looks terrible out there.
What position would Lyle Collins play? Would it be left guard?
No, I'm saying he takes, if Tyler Smith can play, I think he might take over for Brandon Steele at tackle.
Okay. Well, the reason why I was wondering is because, Lyle Collins was a natural guard.
Oh, yeah, he should have been a guard. He wanted to be paid like a tackle.
Yeah, so he moved out to right tackle. He had some good years, injured a lot. And then, we kind of saw some of his limitations, and he went to Cincinnati, and they kind of got exposed a little bit more. I'm excited to have him. He's a good depth signing. Plug him in as a starter. He'll be, fine. But yeah, definitely need to address because it's so weird with this team. If Tyron Smith or Tyler Smith are out of the game, we look so bad on offense. It goes from top of best in the league to 25th in the league.
And that's the one thing people forget about that Arizona game. Dallas was without 3 offensive linemen. Yeah. And that completely changed everything about that game. You're 100% right. And that's why I think going forward, I think we can go ahead and announce it now. We will be having another live draft show in the studios this year. I think Dallas has got to either spend money or preferably draft offensive line. You've got to start, Tyler Smith is now he's not far off from being a top guard.
I think he was rated or PFF.
Yeah.
Football Focus, they rated him as a top left guard in football at one point this season.
Exactly. And you still got a few years left from Martin. Not many. And he could be one of those that's like, okay, I've reached my limit. I'm done. But if I think you've got 3 more years of Martin. So you need to be building your tackles now, whether it be through trade, draft, free agency, all of the above. They cannot go into next year with the same offensive line, and depth's an issue everywhere. So you gotta have good people, and we do have Matt Waleko coming back. We haven't got to see him at all. He's been hurt his 2 years, and that was a guy that when they drafted him, they kind of projected him to be a day one swing starter, or old swing tackle as we used to call it. But still, if they drafted all run-stopping defensive linemen and offensive linemen in the draft this year, I would not be unhappy. I would be very happy with that.
Definitely need to address our run defense. Mozzie Smith, I'll give him a pass this year, but I'm going to see some improvement next season because
he was getting skated a lot in this game in that second half.
I don't want people to start chanting taco when he starts. Because, Taco Charlton was another first-round Michigan defensive lineman that Dallas drafted that was a bust. I don't want him to be another one.
Well, you do got to start to wonder, and for the Jerry Jones, the GM, everybody shut up. We're talking scouts and that. You do have to wonder, though, do you trust whoever's giving you that Michigan information?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, departments make great decisions based on the information that's provided to them. So if you're a front office that's getting great players, like you're getting diamonds in the rough year after year after year, you have a really good scouting department.
Baltimore Ravens.
And Ozzie Newsome will get the credit, and he is the guy that eventually makes the decision. But it's just like with politics and the president, it's the advisors that you worry about in the front office. And Dallas, man, they've been really good on offensive line. If they draft an offensive lineman, I'm at the point now you could be like, yeah, this offensive lineman's 5'3", 162 pounds, never played football, and I'd be like, oh, he must be an all-pro because Dallas drafts good offensive linemen right now. What they don't do is draft good defensive linemen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Dallas has been hitting it out of the park with offensive linemen. So, yeah, maybe so.
And wide receivers.
And what?
And wide receivers. I know Michael Gallup hasn't. I know Michael Gallup hasn't come through, but in the last, since 2010, you drafted Dez Bryant, who ended up being, leading or breaking your club's 100 touchdown thing. And I think if things would have gone right for the Cowboys in the playoffs, he might be looked upon different. And then they drafted CeeDee Lamb. You've literally got 2 iconic wide receivers. Because I think it's time to go ahead and say it right now. I know Tyreek Hill, but go look at their stats. CeeDee Lamb is not far behind Tyreek Hill as far as best wide receiver this year.
Yeah, I think he's about under 70 yards away from the receiving lead from Tyreek Hill. I'm not sure how much he's going to play Sunday, but yeah, I'd like to see that receiver race.
Lamb
or Hill.
Oh, okay, Hill. Yeah. Well, both of them have to play.
They both have to play, but Hill's been having some issues.
Okay. I see what you mean. I thought you meant sitting out for playoff, but no, you're right. I forgot about that. He got banged up last week after making that big play.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm rooting for Lamb to get the receiving yardage win. He's already leading the conference, but I want him to finish first in the NFL. Great season by Lamb. Great season. I'm glad people are starting to give him the love that he deserves. He's a really good player.
And it started slow. First 6 games, he only had 60 yards a game, or 60 yards as a high. But if you notice, that's great receivers do that. They'll start slower and kind of round into form. One of the things I had asked you to post a link, because I literally thought about this in one of the stats during the game. Dallas was like 9 for 12 on third downs, which is great.
Yeah.
The average third down was 3rd and 9.
That's
tells
better.
you that tells you that, hey, that's great that you're getting the first downs, but why are you still trying to run on expected run downs? If you're trying to fix your run defense, you don't run on first down.
Right.
You're trying to fix your run defense by getting it yards, by getting it lanes. So you run on 2nd and 7. You run on 2nd and 4. You don't run on 1st and 10. And I'm not even looking at the stats. They might not. But it sure does feel like 1st and 2nd, Dallas is a very conservative a lot of times.
Yeah, they kind of like shoot themselves in the foot with that. Like, you can look at their stats, and it's impressive what they do on offense. But yeah, they put themselves in some holes that they shouldn't be. They should be. They're talented enough to turn 1st and 10 to 2nd and 4 because they have Jake Ferguson, or they got Gallup, or they got Tolbert, or they got Cooks. They can create situations that make it easier for them to run the ball. In games like this, it makes me feel that Tony Pollard's just run out of gas, just the way the game is looking. He probably hasn't, but
I think he's just first off, and I'm not saying they should have kept Zeke. I think we see the season that Zeke's having. If we'd have kept him, it probably would have been a lot like last year, 800 yards, 12 touchdowns type. So I do think we missed Zeke, but I didn't have to be Zeke, but you had to put somebody in as number 2. I mean, it makes no sense to me why they decided, especially when Pollard's on his contract year. What if he would have went off? What if he'd have had 1,600 yards? Then he's out the door. I think he might be out the door anyway for the other reason, not performing well. But yeah, no matter where they end the season, one of the mistakes that I think they made at the beginning was not having a legitimate number 2 running back threat.
Yeah, so that'll be another thing outside of run stuffing defensive linemen and more depth at offensive line. They'll need to address running back, and they might have one available because Dalvin Cook got released by the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I have bring him in now just to see, kick the tires. But there's a reason he didn't play well, because Breece Hall's been running through plenty of gaps and holes, and it wasn't like it's not like New York. I know Jets have struggled on everything else, but their run game has been really good. So if Dalvin Cook is not getting runs, there's something not in the tank, I bet, in that one.
He helped me almost win one of my fantasy football leads. So yeah,
This week,
yeah, that was the one in my company's league. I lost
Dalvin Cook did.
No, Breece Hall.
Oh, I was about to say, Jesus Christ, what were y'all playing, a negative league? Oh, that would be a fun fantasy.
Yeah, I don't think it's been created yet.
You draft the worst, but you have to have certain rules, man. When this stuff comes to me so quick like this, you have to have certain rules. Like, you have to draft starters. Yeah. You can't draft a guy sitting on the bench, the 4th string. They have to be starters, and then go from there. That would be absolutely fun to do right there. That would be, because think of it like this. Oh no, I have no other option. I've got to play Josh Allen at quarterback. Damn it. All right, but anyway, so what are your thoughts going into this Washington game? A game that I don't ever like playing in Washington and Philadelphia when it's 45 degrees and it's dark already through the first quarter. And guess what? They're going to be playing in Washington when it's 45 degrees and it's dark halfway through the first quarter. I'm not worried about this game because this era of Dallas closes out bad teams. I know Arizona, but that's literally the first one in 3 or 4 years. They close out bad teams really well, but man, I do not like this scenario. This just feels like when Dallas does Dallas things and spit the bit.
Going back to Arizona, I am happy to admit that loss was meaningless this year, assuming Dallas wins on Sunday. So I'm actually happy about that. Washington's lost 7 games in a row. They don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. They don't know what their head coaching situation is going to be. This is a game Dallas will win. I know last year they lost and looked awful, and the starters played a lot of the game. I don't think they were really playing
I don't
as
either.
hard. Yeah, I think they're playing more of a vanilla offense, just and getting their players reps, just getting ready for the wild card game against Tampa. But I don't think that was the same Dallas team that played Tampa the following week. It was like night and day.
Well, and let's remember, Washington had something to play for last year. You were the only team out in your conference or your division that's not making the playoffs, but you had been really competitive all year long for the most part. And so I still think they had that. It's different this year. You've got, like you said, is Rivera's going to be back? What's going to happen? Sam Howell. The only reason he played last week is because Jacoby Brissett is hurt. Both of those guys, though, oddly scare me. Because Jacoby, because he doesn't make mistakes, and then Sam Howell might make mistakes, but Sam Howell does have a little bit of a gunslinger in him.
Washington hung with Dallas for a little over a half on Thanksgiving, and then the turnovers happened, and that was all she wrote.
What was it? Man, I already forgot that game.
It was a blowout, but it was a close game going into the third quarter, and then the turnovers started happening, and that was it. But I mean, they've gotten what by Miami.
20-10 at half. You're right. It was 20-10 at half. Oh, there's a score. You're right, man. It was a scoreless third quarter, and then Dallas does what Dallas does and scored a bunch of trash touchdowns at the end to make it look worse than it was.
If the Dallas Cowboys are going to make the NFC title game this year, they need to just win, beat Washington. I don't care how ugly it is. They haven't lost in 16 games at home. So get home field advantage for 2 rounds. That'll be your path to the NFC title game, and then see what happens with San Francisco, because I think San Francisco is going to make it to the NFC title game.
Well, I will say this: it will be a tougher. It'll be a tougher first round. So, do you trade that? Are you comfortable trading that for the chance for home field advantage at least one more game? I am. I mean, because what's the point of going to Atlanta, Tampa, New Orleans, beating them by 2 touchdowns? That doesn't prove anything. I'd rather you can beat the Seahawks, you can beat the Rams, you can beat Green Bay, or you can't.
And in this scenario, the Rams are probably locked in at the 6th seed, which would mean a date in Detroit. And then Philadelphia is essentially locked in at the 5th seed, which is a date who we both predict is going to be Tampa, because they have the easiest path. It's a win-in scenario. And they're playing Carolina. That's the easier scenario.
Yeah, well, let's remember Minnesota out at Arizona for a game a few years ago that decided a playoff game.
2003. Yeah, that
was a Minnesota team that you felt that they got in could have been dangerous.
Well, they started the season 6-0, and they just started cratering. They were 9-6 going into that game with a backup quarterback for Arizona. Hail Mary, game over. It was the craziest ending to a season.
Now, in saying all that, let's go ahead and project. We're going to go ahead and assume Dallas wins, because if they don't and they do get this, we know they're playing the South winner. Right. But if they do win, who would you prefer to see in that playoff game? For me, it's Green Bay.
Well, currently Green Bay is the number 7 seed, and they're in a win-and-in scenario. I would probably – I don't want to play the Seahawks again.
That's the one that scares me the most of them. I know the Rams are better than they were when they played Dallas, but Tyrod Taylor and the Giants still almost beat them last week.
New Orleans, I think they need help to get in. I think it's more of they have a better chance of the 4 seed than the 7 seed. Minnesota needs a lot of help. Atlanta needs help, but Atlanta is only playing for the 4 seed. So I'd rather play the Packers than the Seahawks, and I'd probably rather play the Packers than the Saints at this point, because the Saints defense is very underrated. Yeah,
but Derek Carr feels like that quarterback that in the playoff throws 3 interceptions, and just. I don't know. I've soured on him since he moved to New Orleans. And maybe it's New Orleans' scheme under their coach. What's their name? Tony? Is his name Tony Allen?
Who?
Who's the head coach of the Saints? I can't even think of the guy's name. Dennis Allen. I knew I was in the ballpark. To me, he has been very meh as a head coach. But I do want to bring up his the former Saints head coach. How big of an asshole has Sean Payton become? I mean, it just feels like I think we're realizing maybe that whole feel good stuff about New Orleans and the hurricane and stuff and all that. That's a great story, but I think we all kind of thought Sean Payton was more of a nice guy, and I think we're realizing he's more of a Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick asshole type than people thought.
I think how things soured out with the Giants and then his relationship with Parcells kind of turned him into this. I think he was a decent dude up until those two incidents happened. Because
Possibly.
remember, like in 2000 with the Giants, he was offensive coordinator. Jim Fossil, may he rest in peace, he basically took over the offensive play calling when they lost a couple of games that season. They didn't lose another game. They went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Ravens. But that was kind of like one big blemish for Sean Payton. And then he came to the Cowboys to be offensive coordinator. You knew Parcells sort of liked him. He kept him around, but you knew there was a little bit of animosity between them.
Well, it came out. Sorry, but I wanted to add to that part right there. It came out later on that Parcells would not take over play calling as much as dictate what I want a run right here. I want, and that Peyton was getting frustrated because he felt that evolution of that team was, it needs to be Romo and it needs to be Terry Glenn and let's throw the ball. And that Seattle, everybody's going to remember the botch snap, but the thing that frustrated about that Seattle game was Seattle's secondary was so bad that former Cowboy Pete Hunter, who had not played in like 2 years, started in that game, and yet Dallas comes out with one of the most basic conservative 1986 game plan.
That was one of the downfalls of Parcells with Dallas. He had talent, and like for example, the year before in 2005, Seattle 13-3, number 1 seed, make the Super Bowl. Dallas went to Seattle during that season, outplaying them.
Yep.
Parcells, they went to halftime. It was a low scoring game, like 3-3, 6-6. And Parcells was, I don't know what he said, but knowing Parcells, he basically was saying, okay, it's gonna be a tight contest. We're just gonna, roll up our sleeves, play tough, run the ball more. When in fact he should have done the exact opposite.
Yep.
Because I know you watched the game and I watched the game. We knew that Dallas was the better team, but they just played too conservative just because that's what Parcells was more used to. He was gonna play to let the other team make a mistake and then you take advantage. But it just didn't work in modern day NFL.
Well, you got to read the moment when he was younger. He read the moments at times, like the Denver Super Bowl where the Giants came out throwing the ball. And Phil Simms had maybe the best half at one point of any quarterback ever. It just felt like those two Seattle games back to back, but especially for me, that playoff game, because it's a playoff. You're on the road. Their secondary is just absolutely depleted. You've got to attack that, and they didn't attack it. But anyway, God, where were we going on all that? We kind of lost our.
You always go off to another tangent.
We're
talking about playoff scenarios.
Yeah, I don't fear the Lions in the second round either because I'm more like you. I know everybody else like it was a 1-point game. I felt Dallas played the better game for the most part, and I don't think there's much difference if you replay that game in 2 weeks in Dallas.
I just remembered this. Remember the 2014 first round game against the Lions?
Oh yeah,
another game that ended in controversy.
I'm actually surprised that wasn't brought up more during all this week. Yeah. And if people don't remember, there was should have been pass interference call on Dallas that basically the Lions would have pulled off the upset. And you want to talk about the screams about Romo, and I will put it to you this way: if that happens, Romo's not the starting quarterback that next year.
Wow.
If they lose that 2014, because there was a line in the sand with that team with some of the old guys, some of the new guys you're going to have to figure things out. DeMarco Murray was going to be gone. You already knew that. I could have seen that Jerry Jones going, you know what? We're going to rebuild. We're going to tear it down.
About DeMarco Murray was the Cowboys offered him, I think it was $2 million less than the Eagles, and he just took the Eagles deal. I guess to me, $2 million for a running back, that difference. I guess I'm just different. Like if I'm still going to get paid $6 million, I'm going to stay and compete for a Super Bowl rather than go to Philadelphia. I guess he felt Philadelphia was in contention.
Philadelphia felt that they were a contending team too. I mean, that's why they signed him. I agree with you. I get it. I always make the joke about Brady that he didn't have to turn down, or he didn't have to be the make the most money because of his wife, and it was true. He's even said that. I do think that some of these players get caught up too much and they want to be the highest paid, not because of greed, but because of status. And it's like, it's like, I'll be honest, if and I'm not Dak's agent because I would be looking out for the fan side of me. But if I was Dak's agent, I'd be like, dude, you've made $100 million.
Yeah.
So like, instead of making another 100 million, make another 90 million, and that's 10 million more that they can get you that back up this, draft that. But I also never going to, knock a player for taking as much money as they can.
Agreed. I'll never do that. It's just more of like my personal preference.
It's the fan side.
If I was in their shoes,
yeah.
You want to be compensated for your talent. So I 100% get that. We're in a free market, and I understand that. I support that.
But as a fan, it's frustrating.
As a fan, it's frustrating because as a fan, like I can take a little bit less, still live a very cushy, comfortable life, and compete for something that not many people in this world have, which is
which might get you more avenues of revenue and more, esteem. But anyway,
I'm not thinking long term because like there still hasn't been a team that's won 3 straight Super Bowls. Think about the long term money you can make just off of that.
No, I agree, dude. I totally agree. And again, I think some of that's agents gets in their ear and family get in their ear and they start thinking about generational money. But 90 million and 100 million are both generational money. But again, like I said, I'm also on the other side though. That is totally the fanboy in me being the old school. Let's keep the team together. Everybody loves each other.
100% agree.
I get you go get your money, dude. Because we all would go get our money. So I'm not gonna be hypocritical on that, But I will say this. I'm older now, but at 48, I will take less money for a better working situation now. Not a huge, I'm not talking about having to change my lifestyle. But that's literally what I did when I moved over from the network. I took less home run money, possible money, top end money for more guaranteed, safer, but also I like where I'm working at now money, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Quality of life, work-life balance are very important, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and move over to the other Texas team. I got them up on the wall this week, boys. The Houston Texans, they are in the greatest win or basically win and you're in type scenario, right? Isn't that how it's winner of that game is in the playoffs?
Houston and Indianapolis, I believe so. Let me double check that. I was looking at this earlier.
Here, I got it too. Here we go.
Houston.
Well, no, it doesn't say. It just says Big Show.
So Houston clinches a playoff berth with a win.
Okay.
They clinch the division if they win and Jacksonville loses or ties.
Okay.
So just to get the playoffs, winning in. Because basically Pittsburgh kind of shot themselves in the foot this season. They lost to 3 of the AFC South teams, so they do not have a tiebreaker against any of them.
Indianapolis needs help, though.
Indianapolis, I think it's also winning in for them.
No, for the division. Sorry for the division.
Yeah, so for the playoff, it's also winning in. So the Houston Indianapolis matchup Saturday night is winning in. You make the playoffs. To win the division, Jacksonville needs to lose or tie, or Indianapolis ties and Jacksonville loses because the Jacksonville Jaguars swept the Colts this season.
Yeah. I'm trying to see, is there a way that both teams from Houston and Indy can get in no matter what?
I think if Pittsburgh loses, if Pittsburgh loses to Baltimore, which is still a possibility, I think Baltimore is still going to try to play. I think you had mentioned this just briefly, but just between you and me, but Baltimore and Pittsburgh, they're not the best of friends, so I've heard.
Yeah.
So
30, 20 years of proof.
Even though Baltimore's got the number 1 seed locked up, they'll still try to win that game against Pittsburgh.
Well, and you also don't want to. I don't think you want to sit 2 weeks, like 2 full weeks. Unless somebody like Justice Hill, I think you'll wind down Justice Hill and Edwards' carries. You'll give more of them to Melvin Gordon, but I also think you can make the case that that's not a big drop off. Melvin Gordon for 1 game can be perfectly fine. You want Lamar Jackson to get snaps as long as he's not hurt because you don't want him sitting for 2 weeks.
Hey, before we delve into Houston,
I
have to say congratulations to Todd Monken. whatever he's done in the second half, that Baltimore offense is just humming. I don't know if you watched.
Dude.
I don't know if you watched that Miami game, but some of the play calling they did, especially in the red zone, it was brilliant. It seems like Lamar Jackson is being patient and not just run first. He's reading his progression, and I really like what they're doing with that offense. They look very dangerous right now. It looks like he's more comfortable spraying the ball, and this is scary because Mark Andrews is hurt now for the season, and they look even better. So think about what happens next season when Andrews is back, another offseason, learning scheme and strategy. Baltimore's going to be a scary team going forward, man.
Well, and that's why I also kind of feel more and more like we're going to be talking about next year as the defending Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. And man, I am so rooting for Lamar Jackson on this because if they lose in the first round of this one, or if they lose in the title game and it's like an ugly offensive game, 21-3 or something like that, you want to talk about he's going to get the full on Tony Romo, even worse though because Jackson's won an MVP, but he's going to start getting that you can't win the big game mantra.
On his way to his second MVP at this point.
I'm still a little. That's a little, and this is the Cowboy fan in me, but I mean, you want to talk about take a guy away from his team. Where is the Dallas Cowboys without Dak Prescott this year?
Houston could say the same thing about C.J. Stroud. 49ers could say the same. Well, I don't know. 49ers are too.
I think, honestly, in that discussion, C.J. Stroud's really the only one that you have that same, you take him away and they're a completely different team. I'm just saying.
But hey, Lamar Jackson's best trait this year was his availability. He was out the last 2 years late in the season, and it really affected Baltimore.
And I have no problem if he wins. And I'm not trying to say that. I just think that
it's going to be either him or McCaffrey. One of those two is going to win it.
And see, I have such an issue with McCaffrey because if you take McCaffrey off San Francisco, if we're going to do WAR like they do in baseball, and WAR is a very it's a
wins
flawed,
above replacement.
Yeah, it's a flawed stat in my opinion as far as how much people use it now as a Hall of Fame stat. I think WAR has its place, but people now use it as the main thing in baseball. I'd never do that because you're talking about scenario hypotheticals. Okay, so who's the player replacing you? So if Ohtani's being replaced by Mike Trout, doesn't that mean Ohtani's WAR wouldn't be as high? Because you see my point. But anyway, I'm saying that when it comes to in the NFL, if you took McCaffrey off that team in San Francisco, I still think they're great. I still think the average player, Eli Mitchell, still has a 1,200 yard, maybe 200 yard receiving, but they don't lose games because McCaffrey's not there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, they're just. I mean, because they have McCaffrey, they're gonna of course use his talents. He's the best two-way back in football. He can.
But that system is just as good without him. Is my point. Yeah,
because I mean, it's great coaching, great talent on that team. They have a lot of depth. It was kind of out of necessity because they injure their players all the time because they have hard practices.
Abusive assholes.
So yeah, I would give it to Lamar Jackson. If I was a voter, I would name Lamar Jackson MVP this season.
Again, I don't have a problem with it. I feel like Dak gets knocked out because of 2 games. I mean, it's not like, if Baltimore was, about to be 16-1 or something, but I mean, they all have around the same record.
Hey, dude, that is a fair point because Lamar Jackson looked bad against the Steelers earlier this season, but the only loss they've had in a while was that Cleveland Brown game.
And that was a weird game.
And he played great in that game.
Yeah, that was just a weird game.
It was just a weird game. All his bad games were the first half of this season. So,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
So now it's more of a distant memory, and he's playing the best football I've seen of him since 2019, and probably even better because he's becoming more of an all-around quarterback. He's built his body up. He's been healthy all season. And they're well coached. They got the right linebacker, Roquan Smith, to complement Patrick Queen.
Dude, he is a beast in that defense.
Well, they complement each other because one focuses more on the rushing game. One focuses on the passing game, Patrick Queen. So, and then they got the 6'4" safety, Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame, who's a ball hawk.
Well, and
Not
you say McQueen on the passing game, but Rohan had the one-handed interception last week. Just looked like a.
oh yeah,
And he wears that single number, so he looks like an old school '60s linebacker, like 275, and just he's about 25 pounds short of Levon Kirkland's size, which is
whoa,
good though.
I was a big boy.
Yeah,
Yeah, again, that goes the Ravens. They're so deep. They're so good. They just found this guy named Madubuike, who's like one of the best edge rushers in football. And I'm like, where did he come from? I didn't hear about this guy, and he's a star with the Ravens.
Green Bay used to do that. You remember that? Green Bay would have like they would have like these 2 or 3 guys that would just. I'm trying to think of that white dude a couple years ago. He had like 16 sacks, and every year there'd just be a new guy, and you'd be like, "Where did he come from?" And then the next year he'd be gone, like he'd tear his ACL or something, and he just would never, And the rate, you're right, the Ravens are like that. They pull these guys out, and I guess you could say Dallas is like that. I mean, again, Dorrance Armstrong, even going back to a few years ago, David Irving. I mean, Dallas there for a while, even when their defense struggled, they always seem to have one guy who could rush the quarterback.
Dude, physically gifted David Irving. What could have been if he had the motor?
Him and Rolando McClain, man. Both of them easily. Rolando McClain should have been an all-pro linebacker in 2014. Go look at his stats. Go look at his key moments, especially when you realize how bad the defense around him it was. He should have been, but he just didn't want to play. And he admitted that. And I have no problem with that. He admitted it when he even came back. He's like, yeah, I probably didn't make it with the Raiders because I didn't really want to play at times. And I kind of need the money now. And so I'm here to get my money.
Yeah, very important.
But anyway, so let's see where you want to go now. Let's talk. Okay, so going back to Houston, Indy. Houston beat Tennessee 26-3. Stroud showed up. He had a good, solid. You could tell he was rusty. He was a little off early on some things, but more importantly for me, a Houston defense. Will Anderson Jr. has quietly had a hell of a season, and he has brought a tenacity across that defensive line that Houston's starting to have a good general pass rush.
Yep. Sheldon Rankins up the middle. He's been pretty solid. And then now their secondary starting to round into form. Jalen Petrie and Stingley were healthy. They made some plays. They were some of the leading tacklers in that game. Steven Nelson, good depth secondary player. Tierra Tart had some plays. He was the former Titan lineman who got released because of, I guess, personal, I don't know, performance or personality issues he had with Vrabel. Yeah, this defense is very fun to watch. This is it's a good mix of young and veteran. They got Jerry Hughes on there. So, yeah, I like watching them play. For the first time in a long time, outside of their uniforms, I really like watching them play.
Yeah, I'm hoping that all the rumors about next year being a redesign are true. To go back to that pass rush, last year the Texans, after a full season, had 39 sacks. This year they have 45. Again, it's not just about sacks, though. It's about getting into the backfield and causing havoc. And they definitely have become a team that can do that consistently. It's funny, you have all these different stats that mean stuff and don't mean stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to just read your stat. I'm going to read your stat sack leaders in a row. Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, Colts, Chargers, Browns, Niners, Seahawks, Titans, Buccaneers, Texans, Steelers, and Cowboys. And Cowboys is, like I said, they're actually they're on the lower end, but that top 5 outside or top 10 outside of the Chargers, every team is not only a playoff team, but 4 of them you'd say are Super Bowl threats or Super Bowl favorites.
Well, in a sport now where parity is rampant more than ever, getting to the quarterback causing turnovers is very key. And yeah, it makes perfect sense to me that the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams are in the playoffs or in playoff contention. So, and with the Chargers, they're the Chargers. I mean, Khalil Mack is making up most of those sacks, but
remember, you even brought it up. He did a lot of that in like 2 games.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack has not had, and he might get some second team or third team all pro looks because of his numbers. People are going to look at the sacks and go, oh, okay. But yeah, that was like 2 games, 2.5 games. And then the rest of the time he didn't do it. Like against the Cowboys. I don't ever really remember him or the Chargers getting a ton of sacks. Now, we were doing a live show. My eyes might have been crossing at some point, but it never felt like Dallas was being pressured a lot by them when they played.
Yeah, they really weren't. I mean, it was typical of what you would think with the Chargers and Cowboys. I think 2020 was another year this happened where it was kind of just ugly a little bit, but Cowboys were kind of in control still and ended up winning the close game. So yeah, I'm really curious to see who the new coach for the Chargers is going to be next season. That's going to be it'll still be a great landing spot, whoever wants it. I think they go veteran though. I think they go with a coach with experience, a proven track record. That's why I'm thinking Belichick, but I'm not really sure.
I just, first off, I don't know if it's 100% that Belichick's gone yet. I think that's undecided. I think you give unless Belichick says I don't want to do it anymore, or I'm not going to do it your way. I think you give Belichick the first option of, okay, you run it back one more year, but we're hiring new staff. Like, it's time to clean house on the staff. You're going to hire a new offense coordinator. You're going to hire a new defense coordinator. Let's go. So I don't know if he's gone yet, but yeah, I could see that if it is, I could see the Chargers making a play for him. I think he'd love that. You get a quarterback that, you hire the right, but are they going to just bring in Josh McDaniels, offense coordinator, or Bill O'Brien?
I think McDaniels doesn't need to go back to New England. I think he needs a fresh start somewhere else. Probably go back to college or something.
I'm talking about, does Belichick bring Josh McDaniels in as offensive coordinator?
I would if I was Robert Kraft, I would fire him.
I'm talking about if he goes to San Diego or LA. I'm talking about if he goes to the Chargers. Sorry. I should have cleared. That's my fault. I didn't clarify that enough. If Belichick goes to the Chargers, I just see him bringing Bill O'Brien or Josh McDaniels. And do you really want Justin Herbert to have to deal with either one of those guys?
No. Belichick, yes, but not O'Brien. O'Brien's a better McDaniels, but yeah, neither one of those guys. It would need to be something different. Something different needs to happen. They can keep Kellen Moore if they want to.
I was hoping you'd shut up long enough so I could cut in. You keep Kellen Moore with the idea of Belichick's going to be here a couple of years. Learn from him. And if things go well, don't put him a head coach in waiting. That crap never works. Yeah. But behind the scenes, don't leave us. We'll take care of you. You learn for 2 years, and then we're going to seamlessly hand off. That's actually a really good idea, because I do think Kellen Moore is a perfectly fine offensive coordinator. Again, the issues we had with him, if they worked, we'd have never complained. It wasn't obvious mistakes. It was shit that we got mad at after the effect. And I tend to realize that that's just because the play didn't work, so that's why we got mad. And I think he'll be a fine head coach. I still think Harbaugh.
Oh, Jim, yeah. Well, I'm thinking if Harbaugh doesn't do that, I'm thinking like the Falcons would be more perfect for him.
I don't think Arthur Smith deserves to be fired. I don't like what Arthur Smith's offense is, but I don't even remember. I don't even know where Arthur Smith came from.
Tennessee. He's offensive coordinator at Tennessee.
Okay, so I think you give him a chance with find a real quarterback. I think Atlanta's been progressing, and also their owner. Even though, man, I saw him on the sideline, and boy, he's one of those that aged overnight. Like, he went from being a spry 78-year-old to 2 years later at 80. It's starting to show, but he's never been one that pulls the trigger quick. And I think there's a lot of positives in Atlanta, so I don't know if you're firing him.
They are definitely a quarterback away. They're 7-9 this year so far.
Really good.
They've improved their defense a lot, but they're basically in the same position they were last year, and they made all this investment on the defense. And what the real problem was the offense. They really thought Ritter was going to be a turnover-free quarterback, and he ended up just being turnover-prone. And
he's not a playmaker, so you don't balance that out in any way.
Yeah, so they need to go a different route at quarterback. They need to me, I still think they need a different coach, but if you give him another season, you have to tell him that he has a cut bait on Desmond Ritter. He needs to get another quarterback.
Oh yeah, no, I think and that's why when we were talking about Russell Wilson to Atlanta,
he would be perfect in that offense.
In that offense with Drake London at wide receiver, 2 running
backs. They don't need him to go over the middle, like a middle passing game is not even required with this offense. Bijan and big plays to Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and they're good. And Russell Wilson did a really good job of not turning the ball over this year.
Yeah.
So that's what they really, really need.
But no, I think it'd be, we see Tepper. Maybe Tepper in Carolina money beats Jim Harbaugh and promises him, I give you control and all that. You run this program. If I was Tepper, that, reports are he threw drinks on players or on Jacksonville fans. Now let's remember, they made the Carolina owner Jerry Richardson sell for some things he said in the past that came to light. I have no problem with that. But they've literally got a dude that's turned out to be kind of feels like he might lean to Daniel Snyder type. So as bad as what Richardson said it was like 30 years ago. And the dude, by all accounts, was a great owner, tried to make the team competitive. The city likes him, again, sometimes you just got to make the smarter decisions. But yeah, if I'm Devin Tepper, you're going to have to money beat anybody right now. You can't go with a rookie. I mean, you've done that. I mean, you went with Matt Rule, it didn't work. You then go with Frank Reich and you feel it didn't work. What rookie is going to take your job? I mean, somebody will, of course. Do you go back to Ron Rivera?
I think his days are numbered in Washington. So
I think he's gone in Washington.
I think he'll be available. I think Bieniemy is going to get some opportunities. Maybe they'll promote him to head coach, or he'll be a head coach next season. Because for all we talk about Washington, their offense did get better, and I kind of feel like he's a big reason. Like Sam Howell actually had a pretty decent season. They need better protection for him because he got sacked a lot.
Well, and he's terrible at decision making. You put a good quarterback in there, and this is I said at the beginning of the year, if they would have had, if Ryan Fitzpatrick was still playing, I think Washington would have been a threat. I don't know if they still would have made it, but again, they don't trade Chase Young, they don't trade Sweat, but I still think that they were a threat. But Sam Howell, he's fun to watch. He's got a little bit of that Jameis Winston in him where he can throw 4 touchdowns or 4 interceptions, or might throw them both in one game. You just can't rely on that as a starter in today's NFL. 1976, you're probably playing in the Super Bowl, Ja, but not in today's. It's all about efficient. You can't make mistakes, all that boring bull crap. That's why, by the way, if you want to know why there's the same backup quarterbacks end up everywhere, the Trevor Simeons and all that, it's because they've learned to don't make mistakes. Check down every fucking time. It's boring, but it's efficient, and that's what keeps them in. But anyway, we're doing some of our off-season stuff now because we were going to have a show where we talked about coaches, which we still will. So let me go ahead. Give me your playoffs. Who makes it? Who ends up on the outside? Start with the AFC.
Well, Baltimore is the 1 seed. I think Buffalo beats Miami, and they'll get the 2 seed.
Boy, what a turnaround that'll be from 6 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Kansas City's locked in at the 3 seed to me. AFC West champs. Jacksonville will beat Tennessee. They'll win the division. They'll be the 4 seed. Cleveland will be locked in at the 5 seed. They'll probably win. They'll be, I think Cincinnati they're playing. So they'll be 12-5. Buffalo or Miami will be the 6th seed. Or actually, I think they'll be the 6th seed. Having to go to Kansas City first round, that'll be sucky. Colts, you know what? I really like what DeMeco Ryans is doing. I'm going to go ahead and say Houston beats Indianapolis.
I think Houston's a better team. I think Houston. I still think again, Minishew's kind of that. If he comes out and has a 12 for 16, 300 yards, it could happen. But he could also have a 10 for 22 with 3 interceptions.
They'll be Indianapolis, and it's a winner-in scenario. So I really think that Houston's going to get the upset. But the advantage is in the Colts' favor. But I really think Houston goes in there, goes to Indianapolis, gets the win on Saturday night, prime time. They get the 7th seed. I still think Pittsburgh wins. I really don't think – I think Baltimore's going to play well for a half and then let Pittsburgh win, and they'll get to 10-7. But they're going to be on the outside looking in. So that's my 7 teams right there. So it'll be Houston going to Buffalo, Miami going to Kansas City, Cleveland going to Jacksonville.
I don't know what happens on this. Again, we were talking earlier. I don't think Jacksonville wins. I think Jacksonville loses. I think Tennessee has something to play for mentally. I think Jacksonville is so beat up right now. Like, you're going to look at that score. I mean, well, they beat Carolina 26-0. I had Etienne in that game for my championship, so I was paying attention to that. And on his stats, it looks great. 100-something yards, 2 touchdowns. That was basically one play. He had a 62-yarder. From that up into that point, they weren't doing anything because they didn't respect Beathard at quarterback. And so if he's playing again, and I think all reports are he's going to play again, and even if Lawrence plays, I don't know if Lawrence is healthy enough. This just something wacky is going to happen. So mine is that Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, Jacksonville loses, Houston beats Indy, Buffalo beats Miami, and I don't know what that happens if Pittsburgh loses and Houston. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
So if Houston wins and Jacksonville loses, Houston wins the South.
Yeah, I'm talking about for that second playoff spot, though. I'm trying to figure out if Indy can get in if they lose, and I'm not sure they can. I think if they lose, they're out. Even if Pittsburgh loses.
I think if Pittsburgh loses, they get in.
Not if they lose.
Oh, because Jacksonville swept the Colts.
Yeah.
So if they lose, and Jacksonville loses, they'll both be 9-8. Jacksonville will have okay.
Hang on, here we go. I'm on the thing. So if the Colts beat the Texans, then they're in.
They're in no matter what.
All right. So if the Texans pull off an upset on Jacksonville, the Colts can claim the AFC South title with a win, which we know.
Yep.
If Jacksonville should the Colts tie, Indy can't lose, so Indy has to win. Dang it! I was hoping there was a way for both of them to get in because I think both of them deserve it. Because both of them had seasons where one of them was rebuilding from the beginning with the Texans. The other one was rebuilding with a quarterback who got hurt, and yet here they go.
If the Colts and Texans tie, and the Jags lose, then the Colts win the division. Houston gets a wild card.
I mean, maybe that. I still think if I still think that we had a tie situation coming up in that infamous Chargers Raiders. If the other team would have played,
that was even possible.
Yeah, and if they'd have played it right, and one team didn't, so the other team was like, "Well, fuck y'all, then we're gonna try to win it." I don't see that happening though. Sadly, I'd love it, and nothing against Jacksonville. I just think Jacksonville's kind of like Florida State. If Lawrence, even if Lawrence plays, unfortunately for them, he just got hurt at the wrong time, and so that sucks. But all right, so what do you got on your NFC?
Well, San Francisco's locked into 1. I think Dallas goes into Washington and wins. They'll win the NFC East and get the 2 seed. Detroit will be locked in at the 3 seed at that point. I think Tampa goes and beats Carolina, finishes 9-8, wins the South for 3rd year or 4th year in a row. Or I think it's 3rd year in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the 4th seed. 5th seed, Eagles. I think they win. I think it'd be the Giants, but I think they're locked in at the 5th seed. And 6th seed, I'm going to go with the Rams. I think the Rams will beat the 49ers. I think 49ers have really nothing to play for, which they don't. So
I mean, the Rams have a little to play for, but they don't have a ton to play for either.
But they did lose to the Packers, so they don't want to finish with the same record and be a 7 seed. They rather.
I know. I mean, I agree with you. But
I'm just saying, Detroit's a better matchup than the Cowboys.
No. I agree with all that, but I'm just saying, like, if they get into the game and Matt Stafford gets hit really hard, or Kyron Williams more likely, he's a little gangly. I think you go, okay, let's just pull him now. We'll let the chips fall where may. That's what I mean. I don't think they're going to fold, or they're not going to purposely. But I think if you see a guy get, like, if Cooper Kupp comes, limping, you're taking him out immediately because you're trying to save him. And I do agree. I still think Denver gets upset no matter who they play. I don't know why. And it's not fair. And it's not the Cowboy game. Like, I have you and I, we talk about Ford. Denver is one of those I've always kind of rooted for to be
Detroit.
Detroit. I've always rooted for them to be well because they've been bad for so long. I like to see the bad teams be good. Right. It makes the fan bases more. It's just fun. And so I'm not saying it because they might play Dallas. I've said this for 2 months now. Detroit just feels like that team that everybody's highlighted on all year long because they're doing something they haven't done in a while. And then they get in that first round, and Jared Goff goes up against the pass rush, Aaron Donald, something like that, in a secondary with the Rams that's still pretty salty, and you end up getting beat. I think the NFC is going to be crazy.
And then I think Packers get that final spot. I think it's winning in. I think they go. The Bears have something to play for. Just momentum going into the next season. They're 7-9, which is what we predicted in the offseason show that they would finish with 7 wins.
Yep.
So it's home game against a rival. I think Packers get that win. It'll be tough, but I think they'll get their 9th win and they'll make the playoffs.
See, I don't know about that one, man. That's the one. The Bears are one of the hottest teams in football right now.
Yeah.
They're playing this game like it is a regular game. There's no plans to send anybody out.
Right.
You've got a team that they haven't beat since 2018 in the Packers.
Wow.
They've not won one game. I think that's a lot of that Washington-Dallas game from last year.
Yeah.
Because Washington was trending up, and they felt like, hey, we're going to throw this guy out here, and even though I still continue to have a terrible game. But anyway, so who does Dallas play in round 1 in your mind?
And for my projections, I think it's going to be the Packers.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's going to be the Packers. I think Dallas is going to get the Packers in the first round, and then in the second round, they will play the highest seed or lowest seed, however you want to look at that, however you view the seeding, the best team left by seed, put it that way.
So in my opinion, I think the Rams do get the upset over Detroit in my scenario.
Yeah.
And I think the Eagles beat the Buccaneers. So I think the 5 and 6 seeds advance. So in that scenario, the Cowboys would play the Eagles in the second round, which would be very interesting.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game. It's going to be in Dallas. And to be honest with you, if that game was in Philly, I don't think it's that big of an issue. If I'm Dallas, I mean, outside of just pure, complete, like, I'm just naming teams because we don't know exactly. But like Denver gets beat by the Rams, and then the Buccaneers upset the Eagles. Other than that, the team left out of the grouping that we think it'll be the Eagles, no matter what, almost, because if they win, they then become the highest seed still alive, and so that they would go to us. But anyway, I agree. I think it plays out like that. I think it's the Packers. I do think it wouldn't shock me if Dallas has to kind of grind through this game. I don't know what kind of Washington we're going to get. The first half last week against the Niners, they played really tough, and then they kind of folded in the second half, so we might get the same kind of thing. I do feel like you're going to see the pass rush look good. I think Parsons wants to get 15 sacks. By the way, he is now the first guy since I can't remember who it was that's gotten first 3 years, all 13 sacks and more. You realize that Lawrence Taylor's great. And again, different era. I understand this, but I'm just saying, as great as we think Lawrence Taylor is, he didn't get to double-digit sacks or 13 sacks to like the Defensive Player of the Year which was 5 years into his career.
And that was also the MVP award too.
Yes, and he did not have as many double-digit sack seasons as it feels like.
This season. Since '86, I think this is a season where a defensive player could have won an MVP award just because it's been so defensive heavy this year.
But we thought there for a while we were going to have this race to 21. Mm-hmm. And I think if somebody would have broke the 21 sack threshold, I do think there's a good chance this year they might have made. But
Daniel Hunter would have been a good nominee, and then it just didn't happen. Danielle Hunter for the Vikings.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter, TJ Watts, Micah Parsons. All of them through like 10 weeks looked like there was going to be just like 5 or 6 guys that might break the record. And now
Deron Bland was getting some love after that Washington game, and yeah.
And it's sad because he's played as good since then outside of the Seattle game, and I still contend a lot of that's because it's DJ Metcalf, and when DJ Metcalf wants to play football, there's not many guys in the league that can contend with him because of his size, and that's why Seahawks round 2 scares me more than anybody else. I don't know. That was a close game then, and it felt like those two teams match up evenly.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else to say?
I want to congratulate Exotic Smash Mouth for our promotional ODTC, the league, for winning the championship.
Yep.
I finished 4th. You beat the crap out of me for 3rd place. Congratulations. And then in the OutDrank The Coverage League, I finished 3rd. You were at the playoffs. And then Michael, Loco Lobos won our championship. That was our third year, I believe, doing
And
it.
all 3 years we've had different winners.
Yeah, football girl I think won last season. That was the first year we changed it to a money league, and this is the first year we have a 12-team league.
Of course, I won the 1 year we didn't have a money league.
Of course, that's the best part about it.
That's how it works all the time with me. But hey, and it was great to see the feedback. It's so funny because we got this league to start in 2020. Again, we brought the show back during COVID, and we brought this league together, and we were going to just fill it with randoms, and then year 2 of the bring of the show, we'd start getting, start trying to get fans, but everybody re-upped so quick from the randoms, and we've almost carried that same group outside of 2 or 3, and it's actually become a fun group. It's like I look forward to, like, I was more excited that I turned my season around in that league because my injuries just killed me, and I was like 2-6. I finished 7-7 in the regular season. I was more happy than that than almost winning my random league that I won a championship in.
Congratulations on that championship.
Oh, thank you.
I had a great. I was in 4 leagues. Finished 4th in the promotional league, and I finished 3rd in the OutDrank The Coverage and a dynasty league I'm in. And then I had a heartbreaking loss in my company's league, man. I lost by 0.47 points, and it was that Harrison Butker kick at the very end that lost it for me. I should have started Jaden Reed instead of Austin Eckler. I think just thinking about, like, Eckler's history. Of course, like, he's a carry machine. Like, he gets catches, he gets touchdowns. Just didn't happen. I'm okay with it. Like, I had a great season. I was a 6th seed in that league, and I kind of just made a comeback and made it to the championship. So I'm really happy with all my seasons.
Yeah, I didn't have as good of a season as I've had before. My goal is always, so I started this profile in 2015 on Yahoo. And for the first 5 years, I wasn't playing in any friend leagues. I was only playing in random leagues. And so I'd get bored and I just would quit. And so my rating was like terrible. And I was like 30 games under 500. And so 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to because you and I were talking about doing the OTC league. And I think you remember, I was like, I might start a new account. And I'm like, no, you know what? I just want to see what I can do with this. I now go into next year 9 games under 500. So that's how good and in saying that, this past year, I only went 63-60 in all my games. Last year, well, the year before last, though, the year that I won our championship, I won like 4 of the 6. That was that year I was also the year I was with the other that I played in the We Don't Know Football League, and like just it wasn't even fun. I purposely would like sit guys and I'd still win by 30 points because they're like, I drafted Jason Witten. He's still T1, right? But anyway, congratulations to the winner of the league. We will have leagues next year, and there's always a chance we might have more leagues. I mean, as we get more and more people. And April 1st, we have some big news. We've got a new sponsor that I hadn't even told you about that deals with fantasy football. It's a little bit kind of a different style of fantasy football and fantasy sports, but we'll be talking about that here starting April 1st. We're excited about that. I don't have anything else to say about Week 17. Do you?
No, I'm looking forward to Week 18, man. There's a lot of important football games coming up.
Yeah, and we're going to, of course, next week talk the last week of the NFL season, talk the national championship in college football, and then, of course, we'll set the table for playoff Week 1. I think we're going to have fun. I don't know. We'll do our playoff run next week of who we're going to pick and all that. But I think we're going to have a fun playoff season. I think we're going to see better quarterback play, which will be big. But anyway, until next time, he's intern Noah. I'm Terry Bennett, and this is OutDrank The Coverage.